about it. And today I am so blessed and lucky to have my friend. I want to say my mentor, though I came before.
No, you're my mentor. Let's get
my close friend, Dr. Mehmet Oz here. Mehmet, thank you so much, sir, for participating today.
I was just commenting to a good friend that you look better today than when I met you, which makes me a little jealous. But actually, it's a real tribute, I think, to what you've been saying about medical marijuana and your multiple sclerosis. And as a physician, when I first met you, you were really having a difficult time. I was still doing the Oprah show, so this was probably 12, 13 years ago.
Yep.
And Oprah sent me down to spend time with you where you were living back then. And I remember we were having a difficult time. You were trying to fish. And, it was challenging getting on a boat, getting off a boat.
Yes, sir.
You're fantastic now.
I think one of the things that people do not understand, this is something I'm so glad that we're talking because, every day someone walks up to me and will say something to me about medical marijuana, and then I realize the breadth of what they don't know. Yeah. People in this country don't even understand the fact that, the cannabinoids that we've been talking about and a lot of people have talked about in the last 3 years, everybody has heard these terms, THC, CBD. Mm-hmm. The United States government has had a patent on CBD for now almost 14 years. Yeah. And the patent, just in case you want to look it up yourselves, you can. It's patent number, the U.S. patent 6630507. And in that patent, in the places where it says is a little category or a little section in patents that's called the abstract, where they have to prove out the efficaciousness of their claims. Yep. The U.S. government itself says that, I'm going to read it to you. Cannabinoids have been found to have antioxidant properties unrelated to MDMA receptors and antagonism. This newfound property makes cannabinoids useful in the treatment of things like prophylaxis and a wide range of oxidative-associated diseases, such as ischemic, age-related, inflammatory, and autoimmune diseases. This is what our U.S. government filed for itself about 14 years ago to tell you that they believed in cannabis, cannabinoids, and the fact that they work. They wanted to make sure they owned this before anybody got on a green wagon. And at the same time, I don't know if you noticed, if you saw last week that the FDA held a public conference on cannabis. And basically, if you listen to a lot of the comments, they said, we understand it works. That's not the problem. Our problem is the fact that we don't know what people are actually getting. We don't know whether or not some of the people that are trying to sell products out there are selling products with truth in it. And I know you did, a couple weeks ago, or you did a show where you literally brought in some products, some CBD products, and had them tested, right?
Well, after some discussions with you, and I was aware of how much fraud there was in the space, we got 13 nationally available products from the East Coast and West Coast, and CBD products.
Yes.
We're not looking at medical marijuana.
Right.
And of the 13, 10 of them weren't what they said they were. 5 had nothing in them. Literally just sawdust. So the people selling it truly were trying to fake you out.
Yep.
And 5 of them had levels that were not what they said they were.
Right.
Usually much, much less because it's expensive. So you put less in there, you make more money. And it's reprehensible. But here's the problem, Montel. It's going to destroy the industry.
Absolutely.
You're going to see that folks are going to try the fake stuff, not get benefits.
Correct.
They're going to say, Montel's a liar. It didn't work. I tried it. He said it might help with my anxiety. It's not going to help everybody.
Right.
Even if it's the right stuff, it's not going to help everybody.
Correct.
But if you're not getting anything, it's not going to work at all. It's only placebo, and that's only 1/3 of the time. So we have a major crisis. But can I go back to something you said earlier?
Sure.
I pulled this up because I was reading this great article about the history of marijuana.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to read this to everybody so they all clear on it. It says, so this is 1929, right? Mm-hmm. They asked the American Medical Association, they surveyed them, and 29 out of 30 disagreed with claims about the dangers of cannabis.
Right.
This is 1929.
Yeah.
This is not a group of people that were particularly, aware and interested in marijuana. It was ubiquitously used. Vast majority of doctors said there wasn't a problem. One said the proposals to outlaw it were, quote, absolute rot.
Correct.
But the hysteria that Anstinger, that we talked about earlier, helped stir up work politically. In 1937, Congress passed the Marijuana Tax Act. However, that made it expensive, all those things. Right. Nixon and scientists of his era disagreed with him as well, right? Mm-hmm. Nixon was the one who signed the Controlled Substances Act in 1970. And so a plant that had been used medicinally for thousands of years was driven underground in 1970. Now,
And if people really started doing a little digging on their own, they understand that back in 1937 this was done, Anslinger was funded by William Randolph Hearst and DuPont. And why? Let's understand cannabis for a second, and let's understand hemp. Most people don't know that the entire Revolutionary Army was clothed in hemp fiber. Our North and South during the Civil War, the uniforms used were hemp fiber. Every tent, every sail, every rope used in the U.S. Navy was made from hemp. As a matter of fact, during the World War II, we passed a National Hemp Act to force farmers to grow more hemp because we didn't have enough of ropes on ships.
okay, you know the word canvas comes from cannabis.
Yes. So
It's amazing.
So, for us to now, and if you go back, there's supposedly is some writing in the I Ching back 5,000 years ago where Chinese looked at cannabis and used it as a medicinal agent. Now, we know for a fact in the last 5,000 years, not one person on this planet has died from a marijuana overdose. Not one. We also know from the fact that back in the turn of the century, 1890s, 2001, 2010, 1901 to 1910, there were probably some 60, 70 different tinctures out there across the country with cannabis as the primary component. Right now, Israel just decriminalized and had 12 years ago made cannabis a geriatric drug. At age 70, you could roll into a hospital, show them your ID, and you can get your bag of marijuana. And if you go and take a look at the people who are using it in Israel, as we become, older, we are on tons and tons of medication that they're not taking in Israel because people have used cannabis instead to meet some of the needs they have. So, the discussion about cannabis is one that really needs to be had bluntly and honestly. And I'm glad you talked about the fact that there is so many misleading or so many fake products out here. I just recently, there was an article printed in Leafly magazine that says how Montel Williams took his stolen CBD brand back.
It's a fantastic article. Must read, by the way, I think for anyone who's listening to. If you want to get the blunt information here, I was so upset. My name gets used all the time.
Yes.
We've done talked about this, but I'm not selling the products.
Right.
I'm not in the business, so I'm not having a business driven out of business. You make a really high quality. You license your name,
Yes,
got
sir.
reputable people making the right kind of stuff, and these bozos were taking your name, angers me, and selling fake stuff, which of course sullies your name, hurts your business,
Yes.
and this is about against me. There's no criminal confounding elements. I don't understand how law enforcement allows this to go without penalty.
When you say fake stuff, we found some of the product that they were selling online. I sent it out to a third-party testing organization, and all it had was hemp oil, no CBD in it at all. And I've worked really, really hard. Now, part of make sure everybody knows, complete disclosure, I do have products in the marketplace that are marijuana and CBD products. And why? I got to be honest with you. When we did the first show that we did, 3.5 years ago, which I think literally a lot of people like to give someone else credit for changing the perception of cannabis. It was your and my show that we did on your show that literally changed the needle nationally from below 50% of people who supported medical marijuana to, after the third airing of your show, I think national polls showed that over 70% of people in this country started supporting medical marijuana. It's because of the information that we gave out on that very first show that you did on this.
Thank you for saying that. But without you bringing it to my attention, it wouldn't have happened. But the good news is that everyone's sort of buying into it. The challenge is the hypocrisy.
Correct.
That's creating hesitation. And we've spoken to the DEA, to FDA, and these are some good people oftentimes, but who wants to go first?
Right.
The DEA says, well, we don't want to tread on the FDA, and we don't want to get fired because politicians might not like the fact they're going soft on drugs. That's how it's perceived.
And it's not really going soft on drugs. We need to back up and have the conversation, the blunt one, from the beginning. You go back to post-Civil War. After our Civil War, we had probably more amputees walking around in this country than we even have today. from our Persian Gulf War.
The treatment of a flesh wound was amputation.
Correct. And so, you also have to recognize the fact that I'm going to say it, it's kind of foul, but, people were still, defecating and wiping themselves with leaves. Okay?
Yep.
It was cold outside. Yep. We didn't have heater, central heating. You didn't have air conditioning. Majority of the water you drank made you sick. So people were looking for something to ease some of those hundreds of different kinds of ailments that they had. And that's where cannabis just kind of always was there and was always something that people relied on as that go-to backup holistic medication. So what could the DEA or what could, the FDA do right now? They could probably, if they just decided that CBD, which is the non-psychotropic cannabinoid, and one of the things that I know I've talked to you about a lot, and I hope we can do a show this year about the fact that people need to understand that the marijuana plant and the hemp plant has well over 400 chemicals in it that are chemicals that we have not even begun to research and study and understand. We spent probably on order of, somewhere around $60 million funding research in Israel through Dr. Meshulam, who is a doctor who discovered CBD and THC and also our endocannabinoid system. We funded that research there, and we found out along the way that we have, what do you want to call it? I call it a secondary nervous system, the endocannabinoid system, but we have a secondary nervous system. That's part of our genetic makeup.
Like opiates work through pathways and their endorphin pathways that somehow pot plants, as part of protecting themselves, develop very important ways of influencing insects, other animals, rodents, and us.
Yes.
And they're ancient. There's an entourage effect, which you taught me about, where you can't just take one little bit. It's how they work together. But this ancient pathway, which is how we often find prominent medications by searching these pathways, they're already built to help us or hurt us, and we've ignored it. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you ignore something? Forget about whether it works or not. Right. Why would you ignore learning more about something so profoundly important as the endocannabinoid pathway in the body?
Correct.
You wouldn't block someone from learning about how the brain works.
Right. And in this way, if the FDA were to step up right now and just say CBD was generally accepted safe, that's all we have to do. Generally accepted as safe. That would allow it to be used in a myriad of different ways. And we know for a fact, if we found one person who had OD'd on CBD and died, then we need to be very careful, but you can't find that.
See, I think eventually the FDA is going to grant it GRAS status, generally recognized as safe and effective, or so just safe. That's not effective, just safe. But the bigger thing that's going to hurt the industry, Montel, is fraudulent products, like the kinds that were using your name. And I don't. Let me ask you this. It's your podcast, but I'll ask you this. Sure. Why doesn't the industry say, this is our standard? The big boys who try to do the right thing, in order to be qualified, this is USA standard CBD. It's got to have this dose. You now don't sell doses that couldn't possibly work. Right. And we're going to this is a stamp saying that you actually have 30 milligrams or 60, whatever you promise is in there is in there. I would think if it's not stamped, no one buy it. And then the industry controls it themselves, because if the industry doesn't do it, the U.S. government's going to try to do it. It doesn't work so well.
Let me tell you, when you ask that question, you've asked that question to me a couple of times in the last couple of months. I want to make sure everybody knows that. Mehmet and I get an opportunity to sit down together at different events and talk. And you brought this up to me about 2 months ago. And I have, since that conversation, literally been on the road almost every day trying to identify other people in this industry that have like mine. And I'm not gonna make the announcement today, but I'm gonna tell you that there's some very interesting things happening in my world, and I am trying my best over the course of the next couple of months to actually team up with a couple of really legitimate and very responsible universities that are thinking about trying to do some things in the double-blind study area and set some standards. I mean, I'm literally, it's just so people at home understand, the product that I have right now that's in the marketplace is under my company name, which is Lendative Scientific, and our product is called Montel. And I've reached out to one of the best manufacturers of cannabis in the country, and I'm the formulator, and I have them formulate our product to my standard. Now, what does that mean? That means that this product is tested in laboratories that are ISO certified, that are certified laboratories, but that's not enough. I'm trying right now to actually certify the procedure by which it's even tested. So, our product that's in the market right now is tested at a feedstock level. We're tested in the middle of the processing level. And I'm tested again after it's been formulated into a product that I want to put my name on. So I make sure that what you're getting is 0 parts per billion, A, manufactured with standards that, don't include any deleterious kinds of solvents to extract the product. And then, there is a lot of, I would say, let's say, difference in the way people extract their products. I'm using, for mine, something called supercritical CO2 extraction and also cryoethanol, which leaves no residual solvent behind, and have just now been introduced to a technology that is almost holistic because it is 100% all natural in its processing. And so hopefully within the next month or so, I may form a partnership with a new company that we're going to try to actually set some standards in this industry and get some states to agree that the standards are the standards that everyone else should use. And then hopefully we'll be able to spread this out across the country.
Good. It'd be better for all of us.
Without a doubt. And I think that's what really has to happen. I mean, you said it itself. This industry needs to police itself. I'm speaking across the country. I've spoken within the last couple of months. I was in Canada a couple of times speaking in Canada. I'm speaking in Southern California at the end of August. And matter of fact, today I have an op-ed piece in the Newsday in New York. The article that just came out in Leafly talking about what I've done, as far as, trying to ensure that people can't step fraudulently on top of you and sell some product. And, what was my reasoning for actually filing a lawsuit? I got phone calls. I got emails from patients out across the country who rely upon me. Mm-hmm. And he said, Montel, I don't know, I got this stuff and it hasn't done anything.
You're cheating me.
I was like, I'm not cheating you, dude. What are you talking about? You got this? And he said, no, I got this product that I saw online and I went after him. And what really has to start happening, and I tell you, for all of us who are treated this way, I think the more and more we sue, the more and more the courts are saying, okay, we have people who care enough about their brand to step up to the plate and put their money where their mouth is. And it cost me a lot to get this done. And, we settled. But it wasn't about the settlement, and the settlement didn't recoup what I had to pay to get it done.
That's the problem. And that's why I think that alerting people that they're being taken advantage of is the first step. But the second step is to give them things that they can crutch on to avoid being taken care of, which is why a national standard that the industry supports is valuable, because then they can't sell fake Montel stuff.
Right.
The fake Montel stuff won't – if they're going to cheat you out of your name, they're definitely going to cheat me as a customer.
Correct.
Buying the stuff.
Correct.
So it won't meet the standards anyway. And then you know what to look for. Because right now we don't have – there's a USDA stamp on meat, right? And the reason for that is – Sinclair Lewis and others 110 years ago wrote articles about the meat industry, and the meat industry shaped up. They policed themselves.
Right.
And then the U.S. government came in and said, well, that's not good enough. We're going to do it for you. And then they created their whole bureaucracy.
Right.
Thank goodness at this point, but we could have the same thing in cannabis. Why would you want that?
Yeah, why wouldn't you want that? And, it's because, again, this has been one of these things that has multiple levels of stopping points. There's a social issue behind this. You've got people who feel as if, they should be able to just do whatever they want, go in their backyard and pull up whatever you want. Well, we stopped you from going to your backyard and taking willow bark and boiling it in your kitchen because we found out that there were a lot of people dropping dead in their kitchens across America. Right. And that's when we set a standard on aspirin. Right. Okay? So there's no reason why we don't do the same thing when it comes to cannabis.
So as a last comment, it's your podcast, but Montel's coming on mine in a second, which is why I'm going to make sure I keep him on his schedule, because I love talking to you.
Absolutely.
But I really do want you making a documentary on the history of how we got here. I don't think most people have any idea that marijuana was a medicinally accepted tool that was widely appreciated into the 1930s. And there's a lot of other issues which you can speak to better than me, because they had race. Race was an element to it.
Race was a big element of it, and continues to be today.
Yeah, but for sure, overtly was a part of the process in the 30s. I think as a nation we can do better.
Absolutely.
As a doctor, the reason I care about it is I think we have people who we can help, and we shouldn't have them having to boil the willow bark and the the back basement
Correct.
oven by themselves. This should be legal, safe, widely available, if appropriate.
Yes.
And I know we differ a little bit on recreational marijuana. I'm very concerned about the effect on young people's minds.
sir.
But we are completely aligned, and I think most doctors in the country are. So
Well, one of the things you said earlier, what people have to do, understand, I want you listening to me today, please, that's the reason why we're being blunt. Understand this. Marijuana does not work for everyone. Period. Half the drugs in this country don't work for more than 33% of the people. You can get FDA approval for 30% efficacy. So it's not going to work for everyone. But for that 30% that it does work for, we should be compassionate enough to say it's okay. And, I got to tell you, you're right. I for the longest time, was one who fought hard against recreational use or adult use. I came around in the last couple of years because I realized that, in some areas of this country where they weren't willing to pass medical laws, they allowed recreation, and a lot of the people who were going in purchasing recreationally are going in for an underlying medical reason anyway.
exactly. That's okay.
Yes.
I mean, that's like if your anxiety is a common problem,
Yes.
sometimes medical marijuana is a good way of doing it.
Yes.
My concern is that there are some people who think I can only get to solutions through medical marijuana.
No.
And that's especially true for young folks. I've seen it myself. I'm sure you have
Sure.
as well. And it does affect the young minds in a concerning way, because the CBD itself is a solve for the THC, but the modern variants that are being sold
Correct.
are so highly dominated by the THC element. There's nothing to counteract that, and that does affect growing brains.
And we got to remember, back in the 60s here in the United States of America and the 70s, American growers tried their best to grow CBD out of the plant. We were the reason. All of Humboldt County, all of the growers that were growing back then, if you go back in the middle 60s, that's when we started increasing the THC levels from about 3 to 5% to now 20%.
Why is that?
Because everybody thought that, and this is something that I'm going to say here again, being very blunt, but people think that the higher the THC level, the higher your high. Listen to me, that's bull crap. Your body has CB1 and CB2 connectors or receptors.
Right.
Those CB1 receptors are the ones that actually receive the THC. They modulate the level of THC that comes into your brain. You can't force it to go to 60 miles an hour when all it has a governor on it for 20. So the extra THC you have in your body, all you're doing is urinating that out, and it's storing your fat. So that
Or it makes you paranoid.
Or it makes you paranoid.
Does damage to you.
Correct. So we're not going to get any higher. You're not. As much as you think you are, stop fooling yourself. You may think, oh man, I was really blasted last night. Were you really blasted last night? You were probably just, maybe you didn't eat enough, and maybe you didn't have enough water in your body. So therefore, it affected you a little bit more, but you weren't any higher than you were 3 days before.